A mouse was taking a stroll in the park one day when all of a sudden he bumped into a very sleek and cool cat. The cat looked at the mouse and said, "Well, well, well, what we have here is a very small and cute mouse. Say, would you like to learn some colors?" The mouse replied, "Oh, I already know all the colors. I'm a very smart mouse, thank you very much." The cat just looked at him for a second and then said, "Well, let's put that to the test. Let's start with the color red. You see this flower here? It is absolutely red, like the color of your cheeks when you're embarrassed." The mouse looked at the flower and thought for a second and then said, You know it's not red, it's actually pink." The cat replied, "Well, that's incorrect. It's clearly red. You see that car over there? Yeah, that car is also red." The mouse looked at the car and thought for a second and then said, "Well, yeah, it's definitely red, so I guess you do know the color red." The cat said, "Okay, next color is blue. You see this beautiful clear sky above us? It is absolutely blue, like the color of the ocean on a sunny summer day." The mouse looked up at the sky and thought for a second and then said, It's not blue, it's actually green." The cat replied, "Well, that's incorrect. It's clearly blue. You see that bike over there? Yeah, that bike is also blue." The mouse looked at the bike and thought for a second and then said, "Well, yeah, it's definitely blue, so I guess you do know the color blue." The cat said, "Okay, next color is yellow. You see that big bright sun over there? It is absolutely yellow, like the color of a banana." The mouse looked at the sun and thought for a second and then said, It's not yellow, it's actually white." The cat replied, "Well, that's incorrect. It's clearly yellow. You see that school bus over there? Yeah, that school bus is also yellow." The mouse looked at the bus and thought for a second and then said, "Well, yeah, it's definitely yellow. So I guess you do know the color yellow." The cat said, "Okay, next color is green. You see those leaves on that tree? They are absolutely green, like the color of money." The mouse looked at the leaves and thought for a second and then said, It's not green, it's actually brown." The cat replied, "Well, that's incorrect, it's clearly green. You see that frog over there? Yeah, that frog is also green." The mouse looked at the frog and thought for a second and then said, "Well, yeah, it's definitely green, so I guess you do know the color green." The cat said, "Okay, next color is purple. You see that flower over there? It is absolutely purple, like the color of a grape." The mouse looked at the flower and thought for a second and then said, It's not purple, it's actually white." The cat replied, "Well, that's incorrect. It's clearly purple. You see that sign over there? Yeah, that sign is also purple." The mouse looked at the sign and thought for a second and then said, "Well, yeah, it's definitely purple. So I guess you do know the colors pretty well." The cat said, "All right, last color is orange. You see that leaf on that tree? It is absolutely orange, like the color of a carrot." The mouse looked at the leaf and thought for a second and then said, It's not orange, it's actually brown." The cat replied, "Well, that's incorrect, it's clearly orange. You see that pumpkin over there? Yeah, that pumpkin is also orange." The mouse looked at the pumpkin and thought for a second and then said, "Well, yeah, it's definitely orange, so I guess I do know the color orange." The cat said, "Well, that's great. Now you know all the colors." The mouse said, "Well, thank you for teaching me the colors, but I already knew them all." The cat just shook his head and walked away.